this week on This Is Gravel, we have Maisies. We have What's Neil Been Doing. We have tire changing and social media as always. Is that correct?
Sounds pretty good, Bobby.
All right. Hey, welcome to This Is Gravel. I am Bobby Thompson, and sitting next to me is...
Neil Taylor.
I like that. Yeah, you have a little bit of pause in there, dramatic, so
maybe I changed
a little flair to the show.
Maybe I changed my name.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so the biggest question that we all have and we've all been waiting for is, Neil, what's been going on?
Well, Bobby, suffering, I think would be the appropriate word. What's been going on? Maisies was this weekend.
Maisies. Gravel ride for Maisie's Pride.
Yes, gravel ride.
In Eskridge-ish County. Wabunsee County.
Up in Eskridge you go. Is there really even another town you go through, I think, on that ride? No. But it's definitely grueling. 106 miles. The heat was up there this weekend. We were up, I believe, right around low 90s, if I'm not mistaken. There was this thing called wind. If you haven't been to Kansas before, we've had a lot of it this year. Had a lot of it. I think this is a sign of maybe things to come here in a few weekends, if you know what I'm talking about. I think we're going to have a windy, hot day at Dirty Kansas. But the wind was going about 20 miles an hour. And so when you had it at your back, it stunk because it just got hotter.
Yeah.
When you had it in your face, it was nice because it cooled you down, but it was slowing you down too.
Yeah, there were some fast times during the event, but by and large, it's a tough slower ride because the gravel is a little bit bigger, a little bit gnarlier, a little bit hard to get a good rhythm on. Takes a little bit more out of you, beats you up a little bit more, so you're a little bit more tired at the end of the day than normal, than typical. And I think you see a few more bike mistakes too. You see a few people go down here and there just because of how tired they are. So
yeah, we were even early on in the race. There's that little Jeep Road 2-track dirt mess that Ryan has us go down. Thanks, Ryan.
Right.
And a guy two in front of me just tips right there. I mean, and the person that was right behind him, was pretty close. He had to stop pretty fast.
Luckily, these aren't high-speed areas because it's on an incline and you're in your climbing gear anyway, so you're talking about a 6 mile, 7 mile per hour kind of fall over crash kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Slow thing, yeah. He tipped over, one of those things. It happens. But yeah, even like you say, some of the spots later on in the course, the gravel's, I don't even know if you can call it gravel at that point. It's boulders, and it got pretty tough. I saw a couple rotting animal carcasses across the road. So these are roads that aren't maintained.
They weren't riders. They were animals, not riders. You checked.
I think so.
Okay.
All right. But yeah, I wouldn't doubt there were a couple riders that were looking like that too out there on Saturday. But these are roads that aren't ridden a lot of times by cars. It's Jeeps or it's bikes. No one else really wants to go down them. But
so you'd recommend it then?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a blast. This is the 4th year in a row that I've been there.
Right. They have camping out the night before.
Yeah, it's good atmosphere the night before.
Right.
But it's a sufferfest. I mean, don't come and think that you're going to be riding, nice groomed gravel.
Right.
You got to be prepared for Maisies. And you could see that just if you look at even the finishing. Over half the people that finished the tour were people that were
you saw me there. Actually DNFs from the 100 that they just went over the tour.
So. I mean, so you get through that first 45 miles and you're pulling to Eskridge and you're like, I'm going to take the 8-mile trip back to the high school instead of the 80-mile trip or whatever it is, or 60-mile trip back to the high school and finish the 100. So.
Yeah.
Did you have a good Saturday? What have you been up to, man?
Well, Saturday, while you were out there grueling for 105 miles, I did the tour, and I rode with Jeff, a friend of mine, and we had fun because we did something we'd never done before, which was we kind of snuck up to the front during the rollout, and then as soon as we hit gravel, we took off. So we got to lead the race for like 5 miles. So that was a lot of fun. And then we blew up. So that wasn't as much fun, but it was a good day, good fast times. I think we rolled in just a little 3 hours, 20 minutes, I think, for the 55 miles. And that included stops with, what was that thing? There was something in a costume. We did selfies with, was he still in the costume when you rolled by?
Yeah,
was it a paper towel roll?
It was at the Great Clips booth. I don't know exactly what it was. Maybe it was something.
I don't know, maybe like a brush or something. Anyway, there was some dude or dudette dudette's a word. In a costume, yeah. So we stopped for selfies. You got to stop for selfies and stuff like that. So it was fun. But yeah, it was a good day. And then we sat around and chilled and watched and rooted for y'all. So it was good. Matt was there. The whole Gravel Guru crew was there. He's got some videos. He's got some highlights. Hopefully we're in them. And let's go. See what he's got.
7 mile time.
All right, sweet. So, highlights of Maisies. One thing I got to talk about. So, Jeff and I are racing. We leave the 47-mile spot. We're told we got 8 more miles to go. We're cruising. We've had a good day. All of our friends at the halfway spot says, don't worry about it. You're in first place. Just finish this things out. So, we're racing. We're still rolling at a good pace. And we see tire tracks. And we're like, all right. There we go. We're not in first place anymore. So we're still going along half mile from the finish line. 0.4 miles from the finish line, Jeff blows out his tire. So then we have to worry about changing the tire on the highway at that point. 0.4. I can see the finish line right there. And I'm thinking,
Just pick up the bike and
hashtag
run.
beat Jeffy, right? I got to go for this. But I didn't. I stayed with him. We rolled across the finish line together, and he beats me by 0.1 seconds because the stupid timer didn't get us rolling across together. So I waited for him to still beat me. Okay, the whole point of this was I saw people having to change tires all day long.
Yeah.
I've had friends come up to me and say, quite shyly, could you show me how to change a tire? I've never actually had to do it while I was out on a race. Okay, so we've done it before. I think it's very, very, very much worth doing again. We're going to have Adam show us a little clip on changing tires and getting set up and get ready to go. Right?
Sounds good.
All right, cool.
Hey everybody, this is Adam from Gravel City Adventure and Supply Company, and today we're going to go over how to change a flat, specifically focusing on the rear wheel, because we're going to address the derailleur and address brake pads and get you all set up so you've got the education and information needed to succeed in any DK distance of your choice. First thing we're going to do when we get a flat tire, there's 2 ways to address the bike. If you're with someone, have them hold the bike upright. It's a little more easy to orient things. It's a little easier to remove the rear wheel. But if you're by yourself, feel free to flip the bike onto the saddle and handlebars. You just have to pay attention to how the chain lays on the cassette, which is the gear cluster. For this, we're gonna need a tube. We're gonna need some tire levers, preferably a pair of tire levers. and we're gonna need an inflation device. I prefer to use a pump because it's a little more user-friendly, a little more reliable, but CO2 is a quick fix method that gets you up and running in no time. First thing we're gonna do as we get a flat, we're gonna shift our derailleur to the hardest gear. This is gonna make wheel removal and reinstallation easier. So hardest gear, smallest cog. This particular wheel set is a quick release wheel set. So we're gonna open the lever, release that quick release, give it a couple screws, and this wheel should already prepare to drop out. What we're gonna do, if we have a clutch type derailleur, we're going to lock the derailleur out to give us slack. You'll notice a lock button on the derailleur. If we don't, we're physically going to just pull the derailleur out of the way by grabbing the body. This wheel should then just drop straight out. Next thing we want to do is a big consideration when we're fixing the flat is how we orient the tire and the wheel. We're gonna wanna sit it in our lap, kind of in our home base position, and use our thumbs to physically push the bead off the rim. This is gonna kind of snap off at the beginning and then should get easier and easier as you go around. We're gonna remove our valve cap and our valve nut, press the valve nut, and we're gonna utilize our tire levers. Now there's two sides to a tire lever. One that has a hook and one that has a spoon. We're gonna utilize the spoon shape to dig under the bead of the tire and pry that off. The reason we have the hook is we can actually hook a spoke if it's a particularly tight tire and start the next spoon a couple of inches away. That just alleviates some of the pressure on the tire, makes it a little easier. Position of the wheel makes an easier removal. So we're gonna sit the wheel at between our legs on the ground, and with slight inward pressure, I'm gonna use the palm of my hand at about the 3 o'clock position and physically just push down. That's gonna release that bead, and then I can run the tire lever the rest of the way. Okay? Pry the tire off and push the valve up, pulling the tube out. At this point, we would want to use a handkerchief, a rag of some sort, a scrap of t-shirt, and we're gonna check the inside of the tire for any residual puncture, anything that's embedded in the tire, anything that may make our installation of the tube go wrong. We're also gonna check the sidewall for cuts, anywhere that our finger could protrude through the tire. If we have a significant cut or puncture, we're probably looking to boot the tire, which means to put in a dam of such, so the tube can't protrude through the tire. A expelled goo packet works very well. A dollar bill or Park Tools makes emergency boots that also work well. At this point, old tube goes in a jersey pocket, never on the side of the road, and we're gonna take our new tube, remove the stem stay and the valve cap, open the Presta valve, and physically blow into that tube to take shape. If you have a Schrader valve, you need to use your pump or CO2, give it a quick hit and give it some shape. Presta valve you can just blow in. Now we're gonna shut that valve. Start with the valve going into, find our valve hole and start with the valve. I'm just going to install the valve into the rim and pull this tire up and over the tube. Then back into our home base position, kind of with the tire in our lap, we're going to feed this tube into the cavity, into that open void of the tire. And physically again, we're going to start working with our thumbs. again, maintaining this position, we have more pressure with our thumbs than we do pulling with our fingers. We can do a better job of installing the tire this way. Start at the valve and just push, 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 push this tire onto the bead of the rim. Making sure that we're tucking the tube if it starts sticking out. And at about this point here, maybe 5 to 7 inches of tire still exposed, it's probably going to get tight. What you can do to alleviate that is physically push the tire to the center of the rim on both sides and just work up the tire. And then finally it will snap in place. You may have to do that more than once depending on how tight the bead of the tire is. Last thing we need to do before inflation is we're physically going to push the valve back into the tire cavity and pull it down. We do that because the valve, where the valve connects to the tube, is the thickest part of the tube, and without doing that, the tire has a tendency to rest on the tube and create a pinch flat, which means that we're changing a flat 4 miles down the road again. It's easier to do it well once than quickly do it twice. Valve stem stay goes back on, finger tight, and we'll utilize a pump of sorts. I like the Lezyne pump in small or medium with the extendable hose. It does Presta or Schrader valve, and it's a very efficient pump. I also like ones with a hose because the movement of the pump is a very rigorous movement, and we want to make sure we don't rip a valve off of a tube. So the hose gives us a little flexibility. Open your valve, tap it once, and this one screws onto the valve. Then I inflate. Now, many pumps don't generally have a gauge, so be familiar with how firm your tire feels when it's properly aired up, and shoot for a pressure that feels very familiar to you. Air to the side of heavier pressure than lower pressure, because lower pressure with a tube can elicit pinch flats if we have a hard impact. The worst case overinflating, it's just going to give you a little rougher ride, but it may resist flatting. After we've inflated the tire, we're going to go with reinstallation in the frame. If we have this clutch derailleur, it's very easy to rotate the cage back. Even without the clutch, this is the same movement we're going to do. Grabbing the body, rotating this back. We're going to feed the cassette, which is our gear cluster again, in between the two chains. Line up our chain with our hardest gear. Line up our disc brake rotor in the center of the slot here, and just lift into the dropouts. Now you can put a knee under there, or at this point you could actually put the wheel on the ground, and the ground and gravity is going to hold the wheel in. With quick release, we want to give it a couple spins. We want to make sure that our quick release skewer at about parallel to the hub begins to support itself, and we force it closed. If you have a clutch, pop that clutch back off, and we're spinning. Back on the road. Some of my best tips and tricks revolve around getting in the proper mindset for changing a flat. One of my pieces of advice to anyone who flats in a race situation is to stop, breathe, get something to eat, drink something, and mentally prepare yourself to change a flat. Like I mentioned earlier, doing it right once will save you much more time than doing it hastily and having an error and having to redo it again 4 to 5 miles down the road. One more piece of advice for everyone, especially people who move saddlebag from bike to bike to bike, is make sure that your tube is the right size for your tire, and make sure that you have a tube that doesn't have a hole. Sometimes the abrasion and things like that from being in a saddlebag can cause micro holes in a tube to where they don't hold air. So it's a great idea to pull your tubes out, inflate them, make sure they hold air overnight, take the air back out, roll them up, put them in maybe a plastic bag to avoid abrasion, and then back in your saddlebag. If you have any questions on flat changes, we do have a clinic here Friday the 18th at 7 o'clock. Or we can do individual education, and you can pick up all the supplies you would need here at Gravel City Adventure and Supply Company.
Awesome, Adam. We love seeing those things. You know, Bobby, you talk about changing these flats, and in the group rides, we see them a lot around here too. I know you posted a picture a couple weeks ago of you guys out there changing one. I've been with Adam a couple times this year changing one. This past week, actually, on our Thursday ride, we had a flat, and when we got out there, we rolled up. We were kind of sweeping the group. And the individual that had the flat had gone through two tubes, already to try to reinflate his tire, and both of them were bad. So I roll up, give him a tube, have him throw it in there, selfie, and we also have a flat tube. Finally, 4 tubes in, we get a tube that's holding air. And it made me think, do we even ever check those tubes that are sitting there in our saddlebags? Right. You know, I never pull it out. Now that I've gone tubeless, never had to. It sat there the whole time. And so I give him my tube, and sure enough, the tube does not hold air. And so it's a good thing, too. I'd say occasionally just take those tubes out, make sure they're good, make sure that they're going to hold air, because it took us 4 tubes here this past Thursday night to find one that would actually hold air on a ride.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Always good to double check those things, especially nowadays. You see a lot of people who Gorilla tape them to the back of their seat post.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're getting beat up all day long, and then you expect that thing to just inflate and go for it for the rest of the day. If it's been on there for multiple rides, check that thing.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. Right now, we got some social media. I know Matt's got some awesome pictures from all around this past weekend.
Coast to coast?
Yep, coast to coast up in Michigan. Of course, there'll probably be some Maisies as well as folks all around.
Coast to coast is one I want to do, definitely, yeah. Amanda took that this year, right?
Yeah, Amanda.
She got that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Did a great job.
Amanda Power, so...
Hey, you're absolutely right, Bobby and Neil. We do have a ton of social media coming in on our Facebook page. Let's start with this photo from Tim Trout. He was at the Tornado Rally 103 miles gravel race in Depew, Oklahoma. Kate was up at the 212 miles across Michigan at the inaugural Coast to Coast race. John was out checking out part of the Dead Sweeto Hundo course in Dayton, Wyoming. Eric Graff was also at the Coast to Coast race, riding from Lake Huron to Lake Michigan on beautiful Michigan gravel. Crystal was out exploring the gravel roads of Iowa for a few miles. Billy was over at the Michigan Coast to Coast with good friends, and some guy that they said randomly hopped in their picture, LOL. Mike Meenan was riding near Cedarville, Tennessee. Joey Brown took this photo near Lynchburg, Virginia on their way to DC. If you have any photos you'd like to see shared on the show, make sure you're hashtagging them. Hashtag #ThisIsGravel and posting on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
All right, as always, thanks for the picks. We're going to try to do this again next week because we hear that some people actually like to watch the show. I don't know either.
Probably not.
So we're going to send us more pics. Send us stories. We don't get too many stories. I'd like to hear some stories. Send us some random stories about your adventures out there. Coast to coast people. How'd it go? Talk to us about it. Let's see. Make sure you hashtag us at Gravel Guru. Make sure you hashtag the Minister of Gravel. Hashtag This Is Gravel. We are getting a lot of hashtags This Is Gravel lately, I've noticed. You can hashtag me if you want, the Casual Cyclist. And can't wait to see you next week, right?
Yeah, looking forward to next week, Bobby.
Sweet.